Hello everybody. Day 63 here at the Academy of Natural Living. 100% raw. If you listen, I don't know if you can hear those, but hopefully you can hear there's a pigeon going and there's all the cicadas going. Magical. Okay, I wanted to share with you something pretty important. So who are we as creatures, who live on this planet, and things that we need to do to survive and nourish ourselves? If we look at our history, history would tell us that we're omnivores, that we'd eat meat when it was available, but usually big game might be dangerous, so we go for smaller game. And if there was abundance of fruits and vegetables, then we'd eat those. But sometimes in certain areas they might be hard to come by. So historically, we are an omnivore. We have the capacity within us to eat a wide variety of foods and survive. And that was necessary. Historically, there's no evidence to show that we have ever been 100% raw or 100% vegan. Historically, at least in our written or in our discoveries, in our written records and any of our discoveries, through our searches with our various sciences, we haven't been able to find any history of 100% veganism or even 100% raw for that matter. So it is pretty much an experiment, and that's something that I'd like to stress. It's an experiment on whether or not it's possible to live this way long term. So you have to assess who you are and where you are and what it is that you want, and then prepare to look critically at what other people are doing and what they have done, and educate yourself, because you're the number one factor in all of this. So, however, I'd like to say that historically, or history, is where we've been. It's where we've come from, and it's not necessarily where we're going or where we're capable of going. So I'd also like to make that distinction. Whatever the mind can conceive, I believe it can achieve. Also too, wherever the mind goes, energy flows. So they are actually very important principles. Wherever the mind goes, energy flows. And if any of you are into awareness training, meditation or anything like that, and you do that quite earnestly and sincerely, you'll discover that that's definitely true. So I also want to put that out there, because I believe a lot in veganism, and I believe a lot in raw food and what the capabilities are. But I also want to acknowledge that there are limitations depending upon a person's genetic predispositions and diatheses. Diatheses are basically predispositions and tendencies towards certain expressions within themselves, physiologically. And we also live in different climates, and we have access to a different range of foodstuffs, different fertility levels of the soil, and different environmental pollutions as well. All these types of things affect how we nourish ourselves. So it's very important that we take these things into consideration. However, it's not an excuse to let the mind be lazy and let our hearts open and dream and wonder, but not just dream, off in fairyland, in an ungrounded way, but to let ourselves be inspired with idealisms and wonder what it is that we can achieve and where it is that we can head to. And there's lots more that I want to say about this as the time progresses, but I want to mention something that Rudolf Steiner said, And Rudolf Steiner was one of the founding fathers of biodynamic agricultural growing system. I'll get that right in a second. The anthroposophical movement, anthroposophy, which was that there was a world super sensible to this one, that you could train the senses to perceive, but that was readily apparent to reason. And he believed that, he could bridge, or you could bridge science and the mystical, through certain training. And that's how anthroposophy was born. The teaching and the training of the awareness and how to do that. He also founded the Waldorf system of education and the Steiner schools. Pretty remarkable guy. Now, he was clairvoyant and clairaudient. Clairaudient, I believe, definitely clairvoyant. So he could see energy and the relationship to energy, and the relationship to ourselves, that especially when it came to nutrition, that other people just couldn't see and weren't aware of. And he said some pretty important things. Now, one thing he said was that humans were basically an inverted plant. Energetically, humans were basically an inverted plant. So plants take minerals from the mineral level of organisation and take it up to the plant level of organisation. Animals come along and eat those plants and take the plant level of organisation up to the animal level of organisation. So humans come along. Now, they can eat plants and are completely capable of taking those plants up to the human level of organisation. We have that capacity. We know we have that capacity. Now, humans can also take animals and take their substances up to the human level of capacity, or human level of organisation, I should say. But what he found was when he was observing these energies, was that the tendency for humans to eat flesh food, or too much flesh food, or put an emphasis on flesh food, short-circuited forces within their body that were capable of taking the plant level of organisation up to the human level of organisation. And that these forces, rather than going into dormancy, actually went into abnormal or slightly deranged modes of action or activity. Now, Rudolf Steiner wasn't saying that we shouldn't eat any animal products. He was talking about the eating of flesh foods in particular. So he advocated vegetarianism, but he did advocate the use of properly prepared dairy products. I'm not sure about eggs, but properly prepared dairy products. And even if you look back into ancient history, the Plaskins, if you want to look them up, in the writings of some of the very, very ancient scholars and philosophers. And the Plaskins were a race of beings that lived in pre-heroic Greece. And they were very powerful. And they ate predominantly fruit from their orchards, but they also drank mare's milk, which was one of the more assimilable milks, apparently, of any other creature. Closer to human milk than goat's milk. Something pretty interesting, it's just what we've been trained to believe, but they drank the milk of mares. And they were very powerful. They used to race the wild animals of the forest and beat them frequently. So it's said in the writings. So, if you use the example, Steiner used the example of cows eating clover and grass. Granted that when they were young, they were suckling on the milk of their mother. But then they would eat grass and clover. And they would take up grass and clover only up to their animal level of organisation. And they build quite massive, strong, powerful bodies. And so what happens when you take cows out of their natural environment and you start to feed them unnatural things they were never designed to digest and organise, and some of those things were slaughterhouse wastes and all those types of things, they started to eat meat. And what developed was a disease called bovine spongiform encephalopathy, which is a disease of the brain, also known as mad cow disease, where their brains basically got eaten away. And this was also shown to cross-mutate or transmutate into humans as well, and to create a variant of the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, CJD, which was basically an insanity and a spongiform disease in the human brain. And I don't know, with the predominance of meat eating in human society, or really just the predominance of eating processed, unnatural foods, deranged, completely denatured, and synthetic substances, and meats that have been raised in inhumane and torturous conditions, in cruel conditions. You know, those concentrated feedlot operations. Then, you know, can't you look across the world today and and see that human race is pretty mad or pretty insane with some of the things that we're doing, and some of the principles and some of the ideologies that we are pertaining to. It's okay to have ideologies. You know, I think it's okay to have them because they set a standard and they set a bar, something for us to aim to. You know, wherever thought goes, energy flows. So it's good to have those ideologies, but they might not be accessible and attainable by everyone. But I think it's important that we have something to aim for, especially when it comes to freeing the planet of cruelty and moving towards cooperation, harmony between our race and nature and all the various organisms that live on this planet. So I'm not saying that 100% raw food diet is possible for everyone everywhere, or that even veganism is possible for everyone everywhere. But, you know, there's some pretty good examples of people who it's working for and seems to be working for. You know, Dr. Douglas Graham is one. If all of his accounts that he's writing, that he's sharing are honest, and there's no reason why they're not. You know, it seems to be working for him. But he seems to be getting in a lot of nutrition and packing it into his digestive tract that his digestive tract seems to be able to handle. You know, and I, for one, am having difficulty with that. So these are just thoughts I wanted to share with you, and stay tuned for part 2 of this because you know, it's pretty important what I'm going to share now. Thank you. See you soon.